Hello, and welcome to the Smile Revolution Show. Right, my mission is raising awareness to the healing power of a genuine smile. And this is my 200th show online since 2020. But I had a radio show years ago before. So I was just getting back into doing well, and I was touring with another show. But anyway, the point is that this is my 200th online show. So, let's see. Now, tonight is really exciting. I just want to read a smile poem to you. It's anonymous, and actually, from my radio show, listeners sent this to me. Smile. A smile is something nice to see. It doesn't cost a cent. A smile is something all your own. It never can be spent. A smile is welcome anywhere. It does away with frowns. A smile is good for everyone to ease life's ups and downs. We sure need it right now, don't we? Some more joy and smiles and fun. No matter what, we still need to bring more joy, and it's contagious, and it's an instant facelift. So focusing on the good, no matter what, helps. So anyway, here's my smile button. And okay, so let's see. David Amram. I'm going to read a little bit. Let's see. There's some quotes. It goes on and on and on with him, but I'll read a few quotes. The London Times. Amram dazzled with his versatility. One could be but awed by his range. Amram was constantly enlightening. The Washington Post. David Amram is one of the most versatile and skilled musicians America has ever produced. And let's see, Minneapolis Star and Tribune. David Amram, a musical catalyst and leader on a par with Leonard Bernstein, Pete Seeger, and Dizzy Gillespie. And I'll just read you a little bit. Let's see, he's collaborated as a composer with Elia Kazan, Arthur Miller, Langston Hughes, and on. I'll just name a few. As a musician with Thelonious Monk, Johnny Depp, Hunter S. Thompson, Dizzy Gillespie, Odetta, Bob Dylan, Willie Nelson, Orlo Guthrie, Pete Seeger. It goes on and on with him. Well, anyway, I can't get into too much because it's just, you can look him up. It was actually a documentary that I watched recently. That's an award-winning documentary about him. Let's see, where is it? Wait, it's called, David Amram, The First 80 Years. It's on Vimeo on demand. It's really great. And he has 3 memoirs: Upbeat, 9 Lives of a Musical Cat, Offbeat, Collaborating with Kerouac, and the highly acclaimed Vibrations. Anyway, okay, so I think I'm just going to start the interview. Okay, here we go. Hi, David.
Hi there, Mindy.
It's good to see you. It's been a while.
I know.
Yeah. Well, the last time I saw you, you didn't see me, was at Richard Barone's Carnegie Hall concert.
Oh, wasn't that fun?
Music plus Revolution. I was in the front row. Wasn't that great? It was such a great night.
I enjoyed playing with David Johansen. What a pleasure.
I know, that was great. And we know that he's been having a lot of problems. And my friend Earl Slick is like best friends with him. So I've been, anyway, the point is that we're hoping that he improves, but we'll see.
Yeah, he was so wonderful, because I didn't really know that song. And after going over it with him, he was so patient over trying to do it over the phone. I said, boy. So he said, well, I got a piano player to play it, and you can just play the flute and sing. And then when I finally saw the way he did it, it was just so beautiful. I knew exactly what to do at the time we were doing it. And then I've watched it a bunch of times since then. And I got to like it so much that now I can hear Joan Baez do it and hear what the song is really about and how it's constructed. He just does it so perfectly himself.
Hmm.
And I played at Farm Aid with him, and he does so many different things so well.
I know. Yeah.
But when he did that, he just, like any great interpreter, any great musician, he just surrendered himself to the music,
Yeah.
and it was just and he was such a wonderful guy to just be with. He and his wife were so terrific. That
Yeah.
was a
Mara.
highlight. Yeah.
That's great. That's really great. Well, and he's also an actor too.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm glad that you had those experiences with him. So anyway, I always talk about how I met my guests. Okay, so you and I met through Roland Musa in 2006, and which is when I met Roland.
Oh, right.
Yeah, 2006. It goes way back. We go way back, actually. So anyway, and you and Roland both knew Pete Seeger and Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and since we've been speaking, you did see the movie The Complete Unknown, so that's good. Okay, so how did you actually meet Bob Dylan?
Well, I had seen him playing in the Village, and I always admired him because he'd get up there and just do what he had to do. And if people booed him or didn't pay any attention, he just did it anyway, and he kept doing it. And you could see he had his own, he was so different than anybody else, and kind of still finding his way. And he always had and I kind of liked that idea that there was someone doing something that was really against the grain, so to speak, and different than anybody else. But that's really what he kept on doing. And then the fact that he's still that way, and he still does what he wants to do, the way he wants to do it. And he makes a lot of people happy. And he's kept wonderful musicians working all those years, and kept the idea of performing music going for a long, long time. And I think it's terrific that he's able. I remember one time he came over and he said, well, can you play the piano? I said, well, sure. I had a nice Baldwin piano. I was playing one of his songs. And he said, well, this is kind of like Dr. John. I said, boy, I can't do that yet. Now I've studied, or I got allowed myself to hear Dr. John with fresher ears, but this is 25 years, 30 years ago. Then I said, well, Bob, why don't you play it? So he was thumping and clunking away. I said, man, I'd be thrilled to play with you, but I said, nobody in the world could play that the way you do, the way what you're playing fits your song. That feeling is just so terrific. I said, you should do it. And he did. And it was wonderful.
Now, when was this? Like, you knew him before he became famous, right?
Yeah. Well, he was,
or when was this?
This was in the 60s. I met him just before he had this motorcycle accident, and he was still in the Village, but I didn't really know him that well. I didn't really cross paths with him that much till the summer of 1968. He came out for a weekend with Al Aronowitz and his whole family. He wanted just to crash. And I said, Al Aronowitz called me up.
He came to your house in Carmel?
No. I was still living.
Where were you living?
I was still living in the city at that time on 6th Avenue.
Oh, okay.
And when he came out to the beach, he was Al Aronowitz was kind of bringing him out there, and the ferry captain was a very good trumpet player, and he said, well, I got a house. He said, I don't know the guy. I said, well, I know he'll pay you, and he won't stiff you. And it was sort of off season, so we came out. The next week, Hank, who was the ferry captain, said, gee, I didn't know about Bob Dylan. I would have given him my place, and why didn't you tell me? I said, well, he just wanted to come out with his family and cool it. And he stayed. He stayed in that place. And then the next summer of 1969, he got a place in Bayberry Dunes. He got a big house, and his wife was so nice, came out with all those great little kids. And he spent the whole summer there. And I lived at the other end, a place called Davis Park, which was about a mile and a half down the beach from where he was. And I used to come by his place and play. And then he came down to my place and played a lot. And we really had fun just playing. And I remember one time we played for about 2 hours. He said, "Boy, you really like doing this, don't you?" I said, "Man, that's all I ever dreamed of doing was playing music." And I still feel that way all these years later.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun. And
Now, where was this exactly? You're talking about towns, but where is this in Queens?
oh, this was out at Davis Park, where I was staying, Fire Island, outside of Patchwork.
Actually, I didn't know where it was. Fire Island.
Outside of Patchwork. But we had to, there were no cars, so you had to walk from where I lived. So I usually walk up there, and he had a great house. And I met his parents, who were really, his mother was great, and his wife was so terrific. And the kids were just wonderful. And I enjoyed being with them and with him. And then he came down, and that time he was sort of retired. And the only time he left the island that summer, I said, "Where are you going, man?" He said, "Well, I got some stuff to do. I'll be back in 2 days." He went down to play at that big concert in the Midwest someplace for about 30,000 people. He just showed up. He said, "I just wanted to," and I read about it in the paper. I said, "Man, you didn't even say where you were going." He said, "Well, I just wanted to see how it would be if I could still do it." And then,
And this was 69?
No, this was 69 during that summer.
Okay.
And then he came back. And then when the summer was over, he decided, I think he didn't want to get a place out there permanently, and felt probably have better life with his, taking care of all his kids and his family.
Right.
And also people were starting to bug him a little bit. They'd be in the back porch with cameras and stuff. And
right, yeah.
He was kind of a very private person. But I enjoyed seeing him in the village. And he had that nice place down in the village. And I think he really enjoyed it. Then finally, he called up. We used to hang out once. I lived at 6th Avenue, 11th Street. And he was very interested in Kerouac's work. And the only people that knew Jack
was
myself and Allen Ginsberg.
And right.
But I think Allen Ginsberg was more interested in himself and what he was doing, and what was trendy than Jack. By that time, by 1970, Jack's star was kind of declining, although God knows his books are and remain beautiful.
Yeah. So
I was more or less the only connection, I guess, that he had.
Okay.
So at any rate, he invited me to the Songwriters Hall of Fame. There's a picture of us in one of my books where he's sort of smiling and he's kind of glowering. We sat had to sit out in the kitchen. And I remember the wonderful Dinah Shore was there, and she said, "I want to meet Bob Dylan." So they sent word back in the kitchen where he was sitting that she'd like to go back and see him. And he said, "Boy, I got to call up my mother. She'd flip out to know I was going to meet Dinah Shore. She loves Dinah Shore."
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, Dinah Shore came back just to say hello. And suddenly it looked like the building was exploding. All these photographers and people came roaring in,
right.
Snap, snap, snap. And suddenly I felt like I was in King Kong, surrounded by cameras flashing away, not taking my picture, obviously, but taking a picture of them shaking hands. And I realized what a drag to have to go through that every day in your life.
Famous, yeah.
Which would be okay if I remember when Odetta was that way. She'd say, "Well, wait a minute, folks, ready?" And then she'd smile and say, "Take the picture, take the picture." And then she'd say, "Okay, now if you don't mind, I want to do my show and have a life. So you all got your picture." He he didn't think that he didn't have any tolerance for that. So he was not in a good mood. And Tony Randall was the MC, and they
I
said,
love Tony Randall.
so Bob got up and said, well, he said, I never thought I'd get honored like this. I never went to music school, never learned to read and write music. Guess I never will. Thank you. And sat down. That was like
Wow.
the shortest speech.
That's a
So
riot.
Teddy Rendell, being humorous and being used to say, well, Bob, he said, no, I couldn't read and write music either. I'm an actor, but I learned how. I studied with opera with so-and-so. He said, you could learn too, Bob. You're very intelligent. And he was sort of making it fun.
Yeah.
But I saw Dylan was so sensitive. He was insulted.
Okay.
And he already said what he. So remember, we rode back in his car. All the people were sitting there quietly. They were so terrified of him. And I was glad to get back to my little place on 6th Avenue. So it was completely icy silent. So I said, well, see you at the next party, man.
Right.
And that was it. And I said, wow, he is doing great, but he's got to pay some dues that I can't even imagine. And I enjoyed some of the songs he wrote were just so terrific. And I thought the movie.
What did you think of the movie?
I thought the movie was basically a lot of it was fictional,
right?
And a lot of people that he was really close to and influenced by, like Ramble and Jack Elliott.
We're not in there at all. I know.
However, that's beside the point, because when they weren't writing an authorized biographical
film. It was a movie, and it's a great movie.
And the movie itself was so beautifully made.
Yeah.
And the scenery and the showing the activism and most of all, the spirit of those times.
Yeah.
Which was so remarkable, how they snuck in the actual television program when Kennedy was assassinated, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and showing the idealism that a lot of young people had. And then they didn't dwell on the wreckage of the music industry coming in and putrefying the whole idea of youth culture being a big marketplace to squeeze money out of a generation of children, and annihilating jazz and classical music and everything, and annihilating folk music. And of course, in one of his brilliant articles, he said the reason I got into folk music when I came to New York was I figured that'd be a way of getting over. He didn't ever, one of the key lines, and I know he put it in the film, was he didn't want to be 80 years old and still be singing one of those great songs that he wrote. He never, I don't think, expected himself to become the leader of a generation any more than Jack Kerouac wanted to be the head of the beat generation.
Right.
He was just an independent person.
Right.
That had the New York Times give him a great review, as Jack did, and knew how to deal with it, and did what he wanted to do, which was to become a rock and roll titan. And he's doing exactly what he set out to do in the first place, and somehow was able to do it. And I have to take your hat off to anybody that can stand being with a major record company for 40 years and still keep their sanity and still be creative. So I figured, well, rather than being sour grapes in an old fogey and saying, that isn't the way it happened, or that's not what this person was like, so what?
Exactly. That's how I feel too.
I just enjoyed the movie, and to my astonishment and pleasure, really thought it was a terrific film. Yeah. And I honestly believe, and probably no one else has been interviewed by you would say this, or no, I haven't seen anyone else say it yet, but I'm sure it'll happen. Somebody who's seen it, who's 12 years old that we don't know, who has an iPhone that could already take a great film just with their iPhone, just using this without the string on it, and a bunch of actor friends can take that whole era and they can include the wonderful way it was before there was the incursion of what Dave Van Ronk called the folk scare, the 12 years when suddenly, after Columbia Records, the second record that Bob made with his own fantastic songs, came out and started a whole thing for 12 years that you couldn't. Folk music became a big thing. Folk music has been here for thousands of years in every culture in the country and
Right.
the world, always will be here. And singer-songwriters have always been terrific and always will be and always have a message. And every culture, every country has their own singers. Some of them are political activists. Some of them are singing poets. Some of them are just wonderful musicians. Some like Leonard Cohen are terrific poets that got to sing their poetry. Some are wonderful musically and good poets. Some of them are like Richie Havens, are fantastic original guitar players to sing other people's music. And they've been here, will be here, were here, and always will be here. And the wonderful thing about the village, the painters, poets, musicians, dancers, jazz players, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, plumbers, and visionaries from New Jersey and checkers champions and assorted nutcases and conservative people all got together and somehow made this wonderful freewheeling community that was not official. Here's an A table. Just everybody hung out with everybody. And that was a thing that was there before the village came. And that still is there. And those of us who were blessed to be part of that can try to bring that into wherever we go, because that's the way people are happiest being and always have been. And there are other countries where that's a given way and where music is accepted. There was never any big multi-billion-dollar interest like there was in the record companies. And unfortunately, the commercialization, is that you're humming?
No.
Oh, okay. It doesn't matter. It's just my earphones.
Okay.
That's unfortunately nothing to do with this film or with the era. And I think that some kid, the 15-year-old kid with the iPhone, could make a movie about the magic of Greenwich Village at that time, and the fact that it's still going on, and that there's more musicians now playing and singing and writing songs than ever. And that's a terrific thing. And Bob is still continuing to do what he's doing. And the movie wasn't really about him so much. It made him a kind of mysterious figure. And he was in charge of every word that went into the film. I think he wanted it that way.
Right, because his manager, Jeff, was one of the producers.
Sure.
Right. But did you think that, was he like that, though? Like the way he was portrayed in the movie? Was he really like that? I mean, Tom Paxton told me that he was hard to get to know. I mean, maybe that's Tom's relationship with him, but I'm just asking you, like, was he hard to get to know?
Well, he was private.
He was private.
Some people are private people, and they don't want you to know that much about them anyway.
Right.
And I met a lot of people like that weren't fun to be with and had really nothing to offer. And I think he was always a very private person. And I respect that. And I know people that way who are really nice, including people I'm related to.
Okay.
And I realize you can only go so far.
Right.
And you can't say, I love you more than once a year. And you just don't get too personal about it, I think, because they can't stand it.
Right. Okay. Anyway, all right. So what about Pete Seeger? Okay, you're one of the few people who knew Pete and Dylan.
Yeah, well, I met Pete in 1948 when I was at a Henry Wallace rally.
I didn't know that.
I was 17 years old, and he was playing. Henry Wallace had been vice president, but not Roosevelt so much, but the Democratic establishment didn't want what they conceived or perceived to be someone that was too progressive. It was bad enough the way Roosevelt was to them, but that was because Eleanor Roosevelt, I think, forced him to do all those great, fantastic things that we grow up benefiting from. Mm-hmm. Were basically her idea. And so they thought, well, they'd get a hack politician that would just do what they were told. Mm-hmm. Sound familiar, folks? So they got Harry Truman, who was the ultimate, what they considered to be a hack politician that would just show up, light the candles, do whatever he's supposed to do. And in the event that President Roosevelt died, they'd have someone in there that would just obey orders and, be just a hack politician.
Okay.
Turned out, of course, he was a fantastic president. Truman was amazing himself, rose to the occasion and then some. So anyway, Henry Wallace decided he'd run for president, and he played really good guitar and was singing and playing the guitar and telling stories. And then I had this guy playing this weird instrument. I was only 17. And I said to my mother, "What's that?" She said, "That instrument he's playing is called the banjo." I said, "Oh." Then the banjo player walked out into the audience playing the banjo when, I guess, just about the time Wallace was done and hanging out with everybody. I said, "Man, I got to meet that guy." So I just went up, and he was so nice. And I met his wife, Toshi, and she was so nice also. And I've known them ever since. In fact, I was with Pete the day he passed away. We played, in fact.
And Guy Davis was there. I know. Roland was supposed to be there. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah, Guy was there.
Yeah.
And the woman who Pat Humphreys, believe it or not, playing Mastinchila Wachipe, the one that Roland and I recorded, in the same key that Roland always sang it in. So I was playing the Sioux flute, playing his piece, just real quiet, because I didn't, want to be disturbing or looking like it was some publicity hound going to someone's deathbed.
Right.
And suddenly we were real quiet. And the guy said, "Let's have some levity," in this big voice. And then he started playing one of those great songs about the fox hunt and making up all the words about Pete being in the fox hunt.
Oh.
And suddenly you could see Pete was lying, it looked like he was unconscious, but he started tapping his foot.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned into almost like a party.
That's great.
Played about a half an hour. It was so much fun.
That's
and
great.
John Allen, who's my neighbor, had called up and said, "You got to come down to the hospital, leave the family." I said, "I don't want to be there and look like I'm a big, cheap publicity hound at someone's deathbed." They said, no. So I figured, okay.
I know Roland was invited too. I know
it was so beautiful. It turned into, and so I was sitting at home thinking, man, I just saw after John drove me back an hour upstate, I have to come back. Let's come back tomorrow. So I got a call from John Cohn down the street and said, "Pete just died." I said, "Come on, man. I was just with him 2 hours ago." He said, No, he died after you left. I said, "Wow." So I thought, well, I was a lucky guy to meet him in 1948 and be with him up until this last.
Yeah, we were supposed to go the next day. And he died the night before.
Yeah, so I met Roland after he had moved in with them when he just come east and was staying on the boat. And he was in 1969.
8 or 9. Okay, it's 69.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he used to wear a little black hat.
Oh yeah, he always loved hats.
He had a bowler hat.
Right. And
he sang all those wonderful songs. And so I did a little concert at I forget where it was, the
Central Park.
Grace Rennie Rogers Auditorium.
Oh.
And they had, I think, Dave Bromberg. And they said, Dave Bromberg, David Amram, and Roland Musa, and the Indian.
An Indian, oh God.
That's the headline. Then they mentioned what nice songs he wrote, and that sort of like a Woody Guthrie style.
Yeah.
And it was that time that he met Dylan. And then I got a call from Dylan.
Didn't you introduce him to Dylan?
No, well, Dylan, yeah, but just to say, we're just out on the street. That's when Dylan was kind of retired and hanging out a little bit.
Oh.
And then Dylan called up and said, "Hey," he said, he said, Gregory, whom we both loved, and Alan, whom we both admired for his activism.
Wait, who's Gregory? Gregory what?
Pardon?
Who was Gregory?
Gregory Corso.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Who Alan said, I like his poetry more than my own.
Okay.
And I guess we all felt that way. That's not discrediting Alan for the wonderful stuff he did as a teacher and a scholar and an activist, but you
right.
know,
Allen Ginsberg.
Dylan called up and said, no, they're going to have a Dylan's going to be, or rather, Alan's going to be reading with Gregory's going to be on with Alan. I said, oh, let's go here at Gregory. I want to do that. So we went down, and Alan was going through his guru phase. He discovered that for his latest costume change. So he added a big smock and that harmonium where he just played one note at the bottom and doing all that stuff.
Okay.
And Gregory got on. It was a killer, as he always is. You know, such good, wonderful poems. And I said, let's go back and say hi to him. He said, all right. So we went back, and Alan took me to the side. He said, I've been trying to get together with him for 10 years to listen to my music. Please. And I said, Alan, you just play one note. You know, he plays some different chords and stuff. But maybe you should. He said, that just blah. So I said, okay. So he said, please, David, ask him. I said, well, Alan was so nice to Jack Kerouac when Jack couldn't get arrested before any of his books came out. I figured whatever he wanted, I was glad to do it just for Jack's sake. So I said to Dylan, I said, why don't we go over to Alan's tonight? He wants us to do some music. And Dylan said in his character, yeah, well, all right. You know, not enthusiastic.
Okay.
But he said, okay. So we stopped on the way. We went to the place on 8th Street and 6th Avenue where they used to have French fry, sort of like Nathan's, a branch of Nathan's,
right?
With all the seafood cooked to crankcase oil.
Okay.
And the great boxer Emil Griffith used to come in there and hang out. That was his hangout place in the village, and so we ate some of that El Griso food, then walked all the way over to Hal's place, and rang the bell, opened up the door, came upstairs. The door opens up to Alan's place. He walks out with a guitar, which he hands to Dylan, has the harmonium strapped on him and says, key of G, Bob, G. And this harmonium was supposed to low A or B flat or something. It was like a different key. And then he had a Wallensack tape recorder all set up with those big keys, like piano keys, where you have to push the button down. He pushed the button down. Dylan said, turn that blank, blank, blank thing off. So he went in the other room. And that was the beginning of Alan's career as Mr. Show Business. And it was pretty horrible, except we spent about 2 hours just goofing around. And I figured, well, I got a real successful songwriter. But songwriters are told, regardless of the lyrics, that they're not poets. Then they got a really famous poet, but that's considered to be something that you do at a university for 12 people. And a composer, bebop musician, classical composer and jazz musician, this doesn't fit into any category. But the fact that I should hate what they're doing because they don't write anything that's over 32 bars, if that, and that they should dislike each other. And all of us, we're doing something on our own, and maybe that might be a nice thing for people to see. Well, if those three people could get together, maybe we, not necessarily the three of us, everybody else could get together with a friend or neighbor that did something different and come up with something. I said, well, that's not a bad idea. It's fun. Maybe we should do something. Then the next day, I get a phone call when Bob found out or when Alan found out that I was bringing Bob over. He already called up Channel 13 and arranged for us to have a show in 2 months called
I knew about that, right?
Called Free. So Roland was there,
Right.
and he said, "Man, this is the crappiest thing I've."
All right. Anyway, sorry. I don't know what happened. I'm having a tech issue. I'll have to stop it and figure out and replay this part another time. So I don't know. I don't know what happened. Sorry, everybody. I don't know what happened. I'm having a tech issue. I don't know. It didn't happen in the interview. Okay. I'm going to have to just figure out what happened and show this next part another day. Sorry about that, everybody. Thank you for watching so far this interview with David Amram, which is, I have a lot more